Speaker, this session we have heard compelling stories of heroes. I think it started, frankly, Mr. Speaker, with your own story as you assumed the role of Speaker. But we heard about law enforcement professionals who have pulled drowning people from broken ice. We heard about amazing music teachers who teach not just some kids, but all kids. We've heard about job creators whose work allowed opportunity for young people to go to college. I want to recognize today, Mr. Speaker, in the gallery, some heroes of mine. Spring 2017, I got to probably be the smallest and last person to join in an effort to bring a Czech missionary, Pastor Petr Jášek, out of prison in the Republic of Sudan, where dictator Omar al-Bashir had locked him up ostensibly for crimes against the government, but really for giving food and medicine and clean water to ethnic and religious minorities displaced in Darfur by the Janjaweed in the South Sudanese Civil War. And so as the smallest part of the effort to help rescue Pastor Jášek, I took the time to call him in Prague after he got back to the United States. And I asked him, Pastor Jášek, how are you doing? How are you doing? And he said, and we'd never met, he said, I'm fine, but my colleagues are still in prison. Mr. Speaker, I learned that his colleagues included Pastor Hassan Abdul Rahman Tawar and Abdul Monem Abdul, who worked alongside Pastor Jášek to give food and medicine and clean water to displaced peoples who were suffering because their faith wasn't built on the right pillars or their skin was just a little bit too dark. And so he said, no one's helping them. They're local nationals. They didn't have the Czech government, the United States State Department, anybody to help get them out. And me, being me, I said, well, I will. And that's when God started to move in my life. I learned the names of Pastor Hassan and Abdul Monem that day, and I got in the car and drove to the fake Sudanese embassy. I say fake Sudanese embassy because as a state sponsor of terrorism, they didn't have an embassy in the United States. Knocked on the door and said, I want these people released from prison. I would ask Pastor Hassan, his wife Awadia, their daughter Joyce, their twins Tambor and Tom, and yes, Tom is named after me, pray for the child, to please rise. They rise today, Mr. Speaker, not just as people who fled oppression based on the color of their skin and their faith, but also as people who stood strong in the breach when I have to ask myself, would I have had the courage to do the same thing? And to be quite honest, I'm not sure I would have. For nearly 2 years, Pastor Hassan and his colleague Abdul Monem were imprisoned with ISIS members because they were too radical for Omar al-Bashir, who identified with al-Qaeda. And as Christians in prison in Sudan, they underwent torture and torment, the likes of which I cannot begin to describe in this chamber because you would gavel me down. And they knew the entire time that if they would simply renounce their faith and that upon which they had built their life, that the beatings and the torture could at least temporarily stop. Mr. Speaker, they never did. And so I would love to take credit for the fact that they were able to ultimately get out of prison, but that was done by something far larger than me. I just got to be a tool in that process. And I talk about how these are heroes of mine, and they are because the courage that they showed in the breach is beyond that which I think I might have, but they also embody something, Mr. Speaker, that is so amazingly special about us. Here they sit today in the chamber of the longest-serving democratically elected legislative body in the English-speaking world, having 8 years ago been suffering in prison based on how dark their skin was and how they worshiped. And so when I learned that their oldest son, Joshua, was attending Longwood University, or that their daughter's at Radford, when I learned that their kids are all making academic progress towards fulfilling their dreams, I thought, wow, God, thank you for letting me have a little tiny part in that. Ladies and gentlemen of the House of Delegates, I want you to, as you say your prayers or devotions, think about the millions of people like Pastor Hassan and Abdul Monem, like their 7 family members who accompanied them to the United States over President Trump's travel ban, which was hard enough to do by itself, who suffer as we enjoy bounties beyond that which we could ever earn. And I hope that when you think of those people, that you will look for some way that you too can do something that matters with your life, because heroes like that stand where I might shrink. And heroes like that aren't just heroes, but now, praise God, they're American heroes. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I ask that you all join me in giving the warm welcome of the House of Delegates to Pastor Hassan, his wife Awadia, daughter Joyce, his twins Tom Bor and Tom, and the other members of his family, as well as Abdul Monem, who are unable to be here today. Thank you.